Thank you for taking this course once again. We've talked about loops. Now we need to talk about functions, and I want you to pay very close attention here because we're gonna talk a lot about this topic. All right, functions and arguments. Let's start with a function. All right. Now, a function primarily means a block of statement. Now, what do I mean by a block of statement? Let me take you back to the exercise that we did. Now, in the exercise, the answer for question 4, we created a block of statement, right? Because we had actually a statement, but let me just say a sentence so that you understand. I don't want to miss the difference. We have a sentence here, all right, and we created a block of statement from that sentence. So we basically created a statement that will perform certain action, right, certain function, all right, a block of statement that will execute certain function, right? So if this statement is met, something gets executed, right? So this is what we mean by a block of statement. All right, now when you create a block of statement and you want to use it repeatedly, for example, I want to use this in another area or in another place, in another form, in another file, then I can't be copying this and pasting this all the time, right? It's not gonna look nice, right? So what we do is we wrap this, all right, we wrap all these in a function. Okay, we wrap all this in a function, all right, and then when we want this to be executed, we call the function. All right, we call the function. So functions are statements, right, that we want executed when we call them. All right, so which means a function cannot execute automatically when you load the page, or you can make a function execute automatically by creating a function for that function to execute automatically. Get the point? But functions by default don't execute automatically, and they have to be kept in they have to be called to execute, right? So now that is basically the concept of a function. Okay, PHP has over 1,000 functions. Right now, tell me if you would like to learn all the functions before you start building real apps to gain the confidence, right? So this is what I've been talking about over and over again. You cannot know everything at once, all right? You learn the little ones that you can and the important ones that you can, so that you can use it, build apps, gain confidence, and then do more later, right? That is what we're doing right now. So when you want to create a function, you have to say that this is a function. You have to tell PHP this is a function by starting with a function. All right, then you call the name of the function. So if you are creating a function to show to authenticate, right, let's say authenticate user, right? And now you see what I did. When you're writing a function, you either use an underscore, right? You can't use a dash. If you use a dash, this becomes a text, right? So use an underscore, all right, or a camel case. I see this a lot of time, right? Use a camel case, so the U becomes how do you call it, an uppercase, right? So this now becomes a camel case name for the name of your function. And all functions have a bracket. All right, now the reason why you put in this bracket here is because you're going to pass in arguments, right? Now we'll talk about arguments later on. Now after the name, you just put your curly brace, right? Now inside here, this is where your functions go, right? This is where your block of statement or statements go, right? So if, for example, if you want this function to authenticate a user, and you have all your variables and everything, and then you can simply say if let's say you have a variable that is fetching the password from a database, and the name of the function, the variable is password. All right, so you can say if password equals, now the password that is coming in from a form, so you can say form password, right? If password equals form password, then you can say header, like header is also a function, header location. All right, you say my account, right? My account dot php, which basically means, look, get the user ID and password, and then get the password, right? This has to be double equals, compare it with the form password. If it's correct, then relocate to my account.php. So this is a function that we've created. All right, now if you want this function to work, you have to call it probably in the form, like so. You just type the name of the function, all right, and you call it, and you have to make sure this is in a PHP tag. All right, if it's not in a PHP tag, it's not going to work. All right, so basically this is how to create a function. Now you can see that this function has variables in them, right? If you have a function that has variable, let's go back to this function, this block of statement, right? So now we can wrap this statement in a function, right? We can just say function. Now this is the exercise, this is the answer for an exercise that we did, right? So let's say the name of this function is let's say allowed underscore user, yeah, allow user. Then we put our bracket, then our curly bracket, right? Now we need to put all these inside this, and now we have created a function to allow users, right? Now this function has variables, right? It has a variable here, it has a variable here. If your function is going to have a variable, then you have to tell the function that, listen, you would need these variables before you can execute the statement. All right, now if I go ahead and save this, we're going to get an error. I'm not calling this function right now, so let me call the function, right? So now I call this function here, right? And then I save it, and then I go back, right? I get an error here that says undefined variable user allowed. I also get another one that says undefined variable old user, right? Now it's because I'm using user allowed, right, and old user inside a function, but I've not passed them into this bracket. So this, when you are going, this is simply this. If you're going to use variables inside your block of statements, inside your function, you have to put them inside this bracket. All right, so here we have two variables like so, and we call these arguments. All right, so now this function now will say, hey, listen, I would need these before I can execute. All right, so these are now the arguments you're passing through them. All right, I'll say this again. When you create a function, and inside the block of your functions, right, if you're going to use variables, then you have to pass the variables to the bracket. All right, like so. Here you see this, we're going to use two variables here, right? Now if I call this, we're going to get an error because we have not passed it to here as an argument. So you need to put it in here, you need to put password in here, then you need to put this this form password in here, all right, and this becomes an argument, all right. So this function needs to collect two arguments, right, two values that pass it through the functions before it can work, all right. So this is a function and this is an argument. Now, like I said, there are over 1,000 inbuilt functions from PHP. All right. Now we looked at things like we've looked at functions like if it's a function. We also looked at even echo is a function. All right. We also looked at for each, right? For each is a function, right? We also looked at what other functions have we looked at? So all the statement that we've written, right? These are our functions, all right. Now this if function is taking this argument. See that? That is why this was able to execute, all right. So when you pass variables to your function, then you are creating a function that that needs to take in arguments, right? Now if I save this like so, look at how I call the function. Okay, I want you to pay attention to this. This is how I called the function. I just called it without the arguments, right? Now when I save this and go to the browser, I got an error that says missing argument 1 for allowed users, right? And then missing argument 2. All right. So PHP knows that, listen, this function needs arguments to execute. All right. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to call the function, which means if you are calling a function that has argument, you have to pass the arguments, right, to the function. All right. Now I'm calling this function with this with the argument. We already have these variables up in here, so I expect this function to execute perfectly without any error, right? So I'll save it, go back to the browser, and voila, you can see that we have successfully executed the function because we have successfully passed in our arguments, which are variables. All right. So I believe you get the concept, right? To use a function, you have to say function, name of the function, and don't write your function with a hyphen inside, all right, or with a dash, all right. Use an underscore or a camel case. Now if your function or your block of statement is going to have variables, then you have to pass the variables to the bracket in the function. That tells PHP that, listen, this function will take arguments to execute the codes, the instructions inside, right? As soon as you get that done, you call the function. Now when you call this function, make sure you pass in your arguments or the functions will not execute. All right. So I believe you've now understood what a function is and what an argument is. And if you have any questions, you can post it down there. I will get back to you and clear every misunderstanding. Okay. And I'll see you on the next lecture. And we're going to use functions a lot, so you should understand it. Pause the video or rewind, play it again, and understand the concept and everything. All right. Thank you.